The history of these settlements is really nearly 2,000 years of history are gathered here in this area along the river Rhine. Of course, the Roman Empire ended. So the river was the border of the Roman Empire going to south to Italy and to Spain and all this. The center of Europe later was developed and occupied by German knights and noble people, and of course the Germans in the Middle Ages, starting with the famous King Charles the Great, Karl der Große, Charles the Great, around 800. German kings reigned around all this huge area of Central Europe. And as we arrive in the 16th century, we have a very difficult organization of nobility and of power and of sovereign kings in Central Europe. At that time, when the Reformation starts, 30 years later, at that time, we had a young follower, a young noble person coming from the family Habsburg family, the so-called Charles V. So imagine Charles the Great around 800, but now 1500, a young man became king of Germany and king of Spain at the same time. And he wanted to get he wanted to get all noble families here in Germany to follow his reign. So Charles V was the king to invite to a diet in Worms. What does this mean? It is a congregation. It is all noble people have to come together because the king calls them for an annual meeting, to charge and to organize the royal sovereignty. And many dukes and earls had to come, and of course Charles, as the emperor and the king of Germany, he also arrived here in Worms. Jetzt fahren wir. Achso, wir sind jetzt gerade da. Wir können jetzt nochmal links und fahren dann so rum, dass wir da vorne, wo der Bus steht, dass wir da parken. Ne? Ja, genau.
Jetzt weiß ich, was du meinst, da war ich schon mal,
ja, genau. Diesen Platz, ja, genau. Sonst, da vorne die Einbahnstraße und da fahren wir gerade nochmal rum, ja. Genau.
Alles klar, super.
So, and it was in the year 1521 they met together beside this big, huge building, the cathedral, the Romanesque built cathedral. This is an Episcopal church, finished as a Christian Episcopal church in 1180. So this was a very historic and important place to call all noble people from Germany to come together to Worms. And at that time, the beginning of the 16th century, as the center of Europe was very was in big danger because of wars and soldiers' attack coming from the Turkish Empire, the Muslim Turkish armies entering Central Europe. And at that time, the Emperor Charles V, he wanted to get support by German knights and by German noble people and German dukes and earls to organize a German army to fight the Turkish army. And this was the question to come together here in Worms. And in the meantime, there was this big new changement in religion. Martin Luther, as a Roman Catholic monk, had studied about the gospel, and he found his thesis. Dann gleich rechts oben, da steigen wir dann aus, ja, genau. And Martin Luther, as a good theological teacher, he worked at a kind of theological school in Wittenberg, at that time, and of course he sent all his ideas to his local bishop, and this was the bishop of Mainz. And the bishop had to read Martin Luther's ideas and writings, but at the end, 4 years later, the bishop wanted to stop the work of Martin Luther, and it was the moment to ask him, like a prisoner, to come to the Diet of Worms, just to renege, to forget, to renounce all his thinkings. So this was the situation. Worms. It was 4 years after the so-called publication of the 95 Theses. So 1517, we are now 1521. In the meantime, there were several theological discussions about the new thinking, about Luther's ideas and so on. But here in Worms, only the noble, the mighty, powerful people of the knights and dukes, they wanted just to reject this new movement. And there was then a division between the dukes who wanted to follow the emperor, and the other dukes, they want to support the Protestant movement, because the Protestant people or the ideas would help local dukes to become more mighty, more powerful in the local area against the emperor. So this was the situation here in Worms. And please imagine, it was a big gathering, well organized. For weeks the town was crowded, and all the time the emperor arrived here, many soldiers, many dukes, and at the end, in May, also Martin Luther was called here, like to face a judgment. Yeah, and the young emperor Charles V, he heard a lot about this new theology, but he as a German emperor, also wir können Motor ausmachen, ne? Ja. As a German emperor, he also felt responsible about religious behavior of all his subjects, or of all his people, and he wanted, because he was responsible for Central Europe and Spain together, as a unified territory, because this family Habsburg was very, very powerful in the 16th century, and of course for this young man there was no question, all his empire should be one belief. At that time. So this was the conflict, the real conflict, and there was no chance for Martin Luther to find support by the emperor. This was impossible at that time, because the role of the emperor was to unify his whole sovereignty, to bring all people in one belief. This was his job, and of course Martin Luther, he developed new ideas, new theology, and a good approach to the gospel, and there was, at that time, there was no chance to, so this was a kind of confrontation. He at the moment, just in front of the emperor, he did not reject his thinkings, and then he had to escape, because he was touched by an imperial ban, and also the Pope had condemned him. And at that time, leaving Worms, he was a banned person, and he was in danger of life. And then he had to escape. He had to find great support by the Duke Frederick the Wise, the Duke of Saxony. You heard about it. And this Duke, he organized just a little, kidnapping of Martin Luther, to bring him to Wartburg Castle. And please imagine, this afternoon and tomorrow we do the trip by bus from Worms to Wartburg Castle near Eisenach, where Martin Luther had to escape. Okay. Some ideas about history. We want to visit beautiful places here. Four places. I want to show you the Central Protestant Church, just here around the Market Square and the City Hall. The Protestant Church, then Trinity Church, and then we go together to the big cathedral. I want to show you the cathedral. Then we go to the garden of the cathedral, where the former palace, where the meeting took place at the Diet of Worms, so the meeting between Charles V and Martin Luther. And then afterwards I'll show you the big Protestant monument created in the 19th century to develop and to remember the beginning of the Reformation period. It is a big monument, a so-called, the biggest Protestant memorial in Germany. We may present to you this afternoon, but you are very tired. You had a long journey, and I think we go together to the market square, and I show you a pedestrian zone, and I give you some 50 minutes time to find something to eat and drink, and then we will meet back we will meet back at the front door of the Protestant main town church, and then we start to visit inside. Later we'll visit the cathedral and the palace gardens, and then the Luther monument. At the end we'll come back to this place to leave Worms, and I think we take 4 o'clock or 4:30. 4 o'clock, the latest 4:30. We should be back here in our bus to drive back to Mainz. Okay. So we have time. We have 2 hours time. Okay. We can leave the bus here.